Hello everyone, welcome back to ESL DRILL. In today's video, let's look at the lesson My Childhood, which is about Dr. Abdul Kalam. Okay, let me read about the author first. Dr. Abul Pakir Jainuddin Abdul Kalam was born on 15th October 1931 at Rameswaram in Tamil Nadu. He was responsible for the evolution of ISRO's launch vehicle program, particularly the PSLV configuration, and for the development and operationalization of Agni and Prithvi missiles, and for building indigenous capability in critical technologies through networking of multiple institutions. In his literary pursuit, 4 of Dr. Kalam's books, Wings of Fire, India 2020, A Vision for the New Millennium, My Journey, and Ignited Minds, Unleashing the Power Within India, have become household names in India and among the Indian nationals abroad. Dr. Kalam received honorary doctorates from 30 universities and institutions. He was awarded the coveted civilian awards, the Padma Bhushan in 1981 and the Padma Vibhushan in 1990, and the highest civilian award in India, the Bharat Ratna, in 1997. Dr. Kalam became the 11th President of India on 25th July 2002. Let's get back and then try to understand some words here. There are some technical words too. According to what we see here, Abdul Kalam was responsible for the evolution of ISRO's launch vehicle. It means he was behind the evolution of ISRO's launch vehicle. Let's look at evolution here. That's development. He was behind the development of ISRO's launch vehicle program. What is ISRO? That's Indian Space Research Organization, which is in Bangalore. And ISRO's launch vehicle program, particularly the PSLV configuration. Let's look at PSLV. That's Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, PSLV. And look at the word configuration here. That's the equipment and programs required for a particular launch vehicle here. And he was also responsible for the development and operationalization of Agni and Prithvi missiles. You know, Abdul Kalam is called the Missile Man of India. Now, he was responsible for building indigenous capability. So what is indigenous capability? What is indigenous technology? That is local, native technology. So without depending on other countries' technology, Indians tried to build their own technology. And Kalam played his role in doing that. Kalam was an author too. In his literary pursuit, let's look at the word pursuit. So the act of looking for something, the act of trying to do something. So he tried to become an author. He tried to write many books. 4 of his books, they are mentioned here, the names are mentioned here. They became household names. It means every Indian and people from India who live abroad are also aware of these. These books became household names. It means everybody knows about them. And Kalam also received 30 honorary doctorates from 30 different universities and institutes. Let's look at the word honorary here. Honorary, given as an honor. He did not really study in those institutes, in those universities and earned PhDs. No, he was given honorary doctorates. So to show respect to him. And he was awarded the coveted civilian awards. Let's look at the word coveted. That's desired. Much desired awards. I mean, everybody competes to get those awards given by the Indian government. So in 1981 he got the Padma Bhushan award, and then in 1990 he got the Padma Vibhushan, and then finally in 1997 he got the highest civilian award in India, that is the Bharat Ratna. And you know very well that this man became 11th President of India on 25th July 2002. Now let's get into the lesson. This lesson we have is actually from the book Wings of Fire, written by APJ Abdul Kalam. The lesson we have is actually the first few pages of his book Wings of Fire. This is actually an extract, a piece of writing taken from his book Wings of Fire. Okay, let's look at this one here. I was born into a middle-class Tamil family in the island town of Rameswaram in the erstwhile Madras state. My father Jainuddin had neither much formal education nor much wealth. Despite these disadvantages, he possessed great innate wisdom and a true generosity of spirit. He had an ideal helpmate in my mother, Ashiyamma. I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day, but I am quite certain that far more outsiders ate with us than all the members of our own family put together. Let's try to understand this paragraph here. This man, Abdul Kalam, was born in an island town of Rameshwaram. What is an island town? That's a town completely surrounded by water. And erstwhile means former or in the past. So, earlier it was called Madras state, now it is Tamil Nadu state. That's why the word erstwhile is used. And Kalam says that his father Jainulabdin had neither much formal education nor much wealth. What does that mean? We have neither nor structure here. It means he did not have much formal education and he did not have much wealth. Kalam's father did not have much formal education and he did not have much wealth. These are actually disadvantages. So look at this expression here, despite these disadvantages. What is the meaning? The meaning is, though there were these disadvantages. The disadvantages were having no formal education and having no wealth. So even though there were these disadvantages, Kalam's father possessed great innate wisdom. Possessed means had. Actually, possess means have, and the past tense possessed means had. He had great innate wisdom. Innate means inborn, natural. He had natural wisdom. He was really wise, naturally wise, and he had a true generosity of spirit. Let's look at that word generosity here. Willing to spend time, willing to spend money, and being kind. That is what we call generosity, having generosity. Now this man was ready to help other people, was ready to spend money for other people. Kalam's father had an ideal helpmate in his mother. It means Kalam's father had a very perfect helpmate. Let's look at the word ideal first, perfect, and helpmate is a helpful companion or a life partner. Husband or wife. Kalam's father had a very good wife. That is the meaning here. And her name was Ashiyamma. And Kalam says this, I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day. Now feed means to give food. Fed, gave food. Kalam says that he did not know the exact number of people that his mother gave food to every day. It means she gave food to many people every day. But Kalam also says, I am quite certain, I am quite sure that far more outsiders ate with us than all the members of our own family put together. It means, Kalam says that the number of outsiders that ate in his home every day was more than the number of his own family members. That's really wonderful. Very kind woman. Okay, let's move and look at the next paragraph. I was one of the children, a short boy with rather undistinguished looks, born to tall and handsome parents. We lived in our ancestral house, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. It was a fairly large Pakka house, made of limestone and brick, on the Mosque Street in Rameshwaram. My austere father used to avoid all inessential comforts and luxuries. However, all necessities were provided for, in terms of food, medicine, or clothes. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. Kalam says that he was one of the children, a short boy with rather undistinguished looks. Let's look at the word rather. We use this word to say that something happens to some degree or to some extent, especially when you are disappointed or when you are surprised. Here, Kalam was a bit disappointed because he was a short boy with undistinguished looks. What does undistinguished mean? It means not very attractive. Kalam admitted that he was not very attractive, and he was born to tall and handsome parents. And he also said, we lived in our ancestral house. It means connected with ancestors. It means house that belonged to his ancestors, house that was built by his ancestors. By the way, ancestors are people who lived before in your family, maybe your grandparents and the people who lived even earlier, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. It was a fairly large Pakka house. Let's look at the word fairly. Again, almost like rather, but in a positive way. To some extent, but not very. Made of limestone and brick, I think you know that very well, on the Musk Street in Rameshwaram. It was a fairly large Pakka house. Now, Pakka is actually of very good quality. It was a strongly built house. It was a very good house. It was made of limestone and brick on the Musk Street in Rameshwaram. Kalam says this: my austere father used to avoid all inessential comforts and luxuries. My austere father. Austere means simple and plain, or sometimes it can be taken as strict. My strict father used to avoid all inessential comforts. What is the meaning of inessential? Unimportant, unnecessary comforts and luxuries. Luxuries are things that you buy because you have a lot of money and then you buy that for a fancy. However, all necessities were provided for. So Kalam's father did not leave any necessary things. He provided all the necessary things. In terms of food, medicine or clothes, he provided all the necessary things. Kalam says an interesting thing at the end. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. What does this mean? How does Kalam say this? Kalam says this because he had a very secure childhood. Secure means safe. He had a safe childhood. How? Both materially and emotionally. It means he had materially safe childhood and emotionally safe childhood. It means when you talk about materially safe childhood, it means that Kalam had all the physical things, material things that he needed as a child. It means father provided. So his childhood was materially secure and it was emotionally secure as well. What does that mean? He got all the emotional support that he needed as a child from the family members. He received love and affection. So that is emotional support. He got material support and emotional support. That was why he had a very secure childhood. Okay, I hope you have understood. Let's move to the next part. The Second World War broke out in 1939 when I was 8 years old. For reasons I have never been able to understand, a sudden demand for tamarind seeds erupted in the market. I used to collect the seeds and sell them to a provision shop on Mosque Street. A day's collection would fetch me the princely sum of 1 anna. My brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I would later attempt to trace in the headlines in Dinamani. Our area, being isolated, was completely unaffected by the war. But soon India was forced to join the Allied forces and something like a state of emergency was declared. The Second World War broke out in 1939. Break out is a phrasal verb which means start happening suddenly. Especially when you talk about a war or a disease that starts spreading. You use this phrasal verb break out. So break, broke, broken. Okay. So suddenly Second World War started and for reasons I have never been able to understand. Now Kalam could not remember why it happened, but there was a sudden demand for tamarind seeds. So tamarind seeds, you can have a look at them on the screen. So tamarind seeds erupted. Demand for tamarind seeds erupted. Again, erupt means start suddenly. So there was a sudden demand that started for tamarind seeds in the market. I used to collect the seeds and sell them to a provision shop on Mosque Street. A provision shop is a shop where provisions are sold. Your household commodities, things that you need to cook and eat. So, provision shop. A day's collection would fetch me the princely sum of 1 anna. A day's collection. Kalam spent the whole day trying to find those tamarind seeds, and at the end of the day, he would sell them to a provision shop on Mosque Street. And a day's collection of tamarind seeds would fetch him the princely sum of 1 anna. Now, what is fetch here? Means to be sold for particular amount of money. Means by selling those tamarind seeds, he would get princely sum of 1 anna. So princely sum is actually, princely means very large, but this word is used ironically, means in a negative way, in an opposite way, with an opposite meaning. Actually, not very large amount of money, because that was just 1 anna. Anna is actually 1/16th of a rupee. So 16 annas would be equal to 1 rupee. That was not a very large amount of money. Okay, my brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I would later attempt to trace in the headlines in Dinamani. Now, Dinamani is a newspaper, and Kalam's brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell him stories about the Second World War. I mean, what was happening in the Second World War, and Kalam would later attempt to find the news in the headlines. So, trace means here find out. He would find out the same stories in the headlines the next day in the newspaper Dinamani. And look at what Kalam says here. Our area, being isolated, was completely unaffected by the war. So his area, that's Rameshwaram town, was isolated. It means it was far away from others, other areas. That was an island town. It was completely unaffected by the war. It means here there was no effect of war on that town called Rameshwaram. But soon India was forced to join the Allied forces. Let's look at Allied forces. Allied forces are countries that support one another in a war. Especially during this First World War and Second World War, some countries fought together and they were called Allied forces. And there was something like a state of emergency that was declared. Actually, a state of emergency was not declared, but things were like this. Let's see what it means. A state of emergency is a situation of national danger or disaster in which a government suspends normal constitutional procedures in order to regain control. So the central government takes control of everything and every local body loses all the powers. That was like that. There was something like a state of emergency, but it was not declared.